Spectra Diversity would like to welcome you to our session around Open Minds Transform Organizations. We specifically today in our webinar series will be looking at diversity measurement in 10 minutes or less. My name is Amy Tolbert, and I'll be working with you for the next 45 minutes or so. And again, it's going to be a very interactive session, so get ready to get those fingers typing on the keyboard. We've got some polls and chats and videos and lots of opportunity for you to participate. Matter of fact, let's just do that right now. Right off to the side of the slide and right below me, you will see what is your role. And I see some of you are already typing that in or making your selection, so I appreciate that very much. We have 5 choices for you, or other, and if you do choose other, please type in the chat box below what your role is. So if none of those others really apply to you in the options, I think it's 5 options or so, then please feel free to tell me what the other is, because I see several of you are choosing that one as well. And of course, the only reason we're asking for you to do that is because it will give us a better direction as to how to frame our comments and our conversation moving forward. So for the most part, it looks like we've got consultants leading the charge, followed by HR, internal, and diversity council members. So thank you for that. The purpose of our session today is to really examine some tools and ways to measure our efforts within the D&I space. And what we do at Spectra Diversity is really look at where might there be some challenges in the field that there isn't yet an answer for. So I'll give you just a little bit of background on me. Academically, my doctorate's in international human resource development. So academically, I'm trained in the field of intercultural research. I also have 2 biracial, bicultural kids that I've attempted to raise bilingually. I shouldn't call them kids anymore. They're really young adults. And so watching them get launched and look at what some of the great opportunities are and challenges that we've had as a family unit due to our diversity in the upper Midwest part of the U.S. Gives us a lot of stories. So professionally and personally, there are critical reasons why I do this work. Some of you may be familiar with the Discovering Diversity profile. That was a profile that was offered for over 20 years. It was the only statistically valid and reliable instrument on the market to measure individuals' opinions about diversity. And we retired that a couple of years ago. It was offered, ended up being offered by Wiley. So that was retired, and that's why at Spectra Diversity we came up with this next tool that we're going to be looking at with you through the session, as well as some generalities and things that we really want to look at why the elements that are present in our space continue to plague us and continue to be a challenge for us moving forward. We do have the chat box open throughout the entire session, so if you've got some comments or things that you'd like to share with us, please don't hesitate to chat to us, and one of our Spectra partners will be watching that closely and getting back to you. Today's session covers 4 main areas. 1, the importance of measurement for diversity and inclusion efforts. 2, looking at what the challenges are and what we can do about them. We're going to examine what organization tools and approaches typically are around measurement and where, again, they're falling short and what we could be doing differently. And we'll be taking a look at the role of assessment. And of course, we will be examining with the role of assessment one of our tools that might be of interest to you as you move forward in, again, improving our efforts around measurement in our D&I. I want you to please type in on the left side, what do you see? Describe it for me. What does that look like? Oh, waving a little bit there. Oh, they're getting tossed and turned around quite a bit. Type in what you see, turmoil, and then type on the right-hand side, how do you think this as an analogy really relates to our D&I space? David, it's a bumpy ride and you're just getting started. Claire Lovett, attempts to stay in the boat together. Absolutely. And you're actually going to see here in just a moment where somebody isn't very successful at that. They actually fall out. But never fear, the team goes back to get them. They're able to manage through that rough water to go back and get a team member. They don't want to leave anyone behind. David, great. Not likely to follow a linear path. That's very true. Now, here they are. They're coming right down the stretch here. And as they come up onto that whitewater, they may have all the plans in the world as to who's going to be rowing first and who's going to be digging in deeper. And that might all be thrown out the, oh, that person actually fell over. They might, I don't think she's getting back up. They're coming through there and can have all the plans in the world, but they really don't know exactly what they're going to be having to face. And I think that's really very true. Andrew, you're saying while it looks chaotic, the lead really does guide the group. Absolutely. And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you can't be playing that lead role for an extended period of time. You need to be able to rotate roles. And the same with the person who's kind of acting as the rudder. They also have to be able to rotate because they're very demanding roles. So looking at how do we not have, as Claire's saying, a fragmented approach. How do we not allow us to kind of live in the fear, but really embrace the beauty of what's in front of us, the opportunity, and approach it in a very positive manner? So I love what you're saying. I love your comments. Oh, now they've got a little break. And guess what? We'll get that too. It's not whitewater all the time. You get a little bit of a break moving through. You're all paddling together. You get a chance to reconvene. But the key here is that it's not going to be smooth sailing really at any point in time, because we are dealing with human nature and it's constantly changing. So as soon as you get it figured out, what happens? You either need to consider the client base, you need to be able to consider a new marketing strategy, which may be impacted by your D&I efforts and initiatives. You may be looking to resource a whole new area or department. You might be looking at bringing on new FTEs. You may be looking at embracing and getting a whole new set of leadership and management on board. The key is that we're constantly adjusting because of the nature of the work itself. So our whitewater journey to full inclusion really started, if you look with me over here at the far left side of that screen, with a growing focus on diversity, meaning the numbers, not necessarily inclusion yet. Back in the late 80s, early 90s is when organizations really started getting large scale initiatives moving and looking at people to charge that effort in organizations. We had a lot of employee resource groups. We were doing training at that time in the 90s around awareness building. Down in the lower left, diversity councils started to bubble up and more compliance goals were being held with great scrutiny throughout the organization. Then we find just a few years ago, we really got more of a focus on the concept of inclusion. So it's not just about diversity in the numbers, it's really about how we can be more inclusive in our behaviors, how we build that more into performance goals. And that's where we are today, right there in that red bubble, together in our raft, seeking data, exploring the concept of measurement. So we will identify some tools and some plans for you today. And we're really going to be looking at and challenging you to think about how is D&I a part of your, and I'm going to say your clients, because the majority of you are external consultants, how can you help your clients build this more into being a part of their strategic business goals? What is your role in helping them do that? How do you make sure that you're not just going in and doing a 45-minute to a half day to full day training efforts? It's got to be really strategically linked to the organization. So that's what we're going to be exploring. And the reason that diversity and inclusion really matters is because we've got quite a bit of research all the way back to Johnson & Johnson at the University of Minnesota from the 1970s. Goody Kunst and Hammer, big in the 70s and 80s with a lot of their research. But more recently, of course, we have in the financial benefits, we've got a McKinsey study that really looked at top executive teams in 180 different public firms and found that the more diverse teams actually outperformed on very strategic measures and stringent measures. We know in problem solving that a study of about 28 teams that were heterogeneous versus the homogeneous ones were more able to be creative in their measures and actually have a broader thought process. Now, you might have a little bit more, what the research also shows is a little bit more time for the team building, a little bit more conflict up front, because you are looking at building together diverse perspectives. It's not right or wrong or good or bad, it's just different. but it lends itself to more effective financial benefits, problem solving, and of course, innovation. What we find here in another research study is that companies that drive innovation by leveraging employee ideas and knowledge meet their revenue targets 46% more often and product launches dates 47% more. Now, for those of you that are internal to organizations, you know that we live and die by those dates. So if they're not being met, we really are looking at heads rolling, positions changing. It's a big deal. So how do we really use individuals and the diversity and our inclusive methods to be able to help those teams be more effective? Now, David, you and some others were talking about just starting this initiative, and I want you to think about how you need to build that business case and then how measurement helps you to see why and how it will be effective in the organization. So just by way of benefits organizationally and to human resources, it does a whole lot of things here, and I don't necessarily need to read the slide, but you can look at the idea of increasing employee satisfaction, decreasing turnover, looking at enhancing the overall reputation. Our branding as an organization would be really important, diminishing any legal ramifications, and ultimately increasing the financial growth and success of the organization. So once you got that business case, then you can really start looking at how do we develop a more inclusive organization. And again, I'm going to really harp on this, that it's about aligning our goals to what the organization's strategic goals are. If there's not a direct link, why do it? We're in business to make money. We're in business to be smart. We're in business to support employees and our customers. And it's really got to have a direct link. And if you're struggling with that, then I think we have to back up a little bit before you launch it to the organization. You've got to have some really clear cut answers and responses as to why and how it will help the organization move forward. We're looking at also investing in an assessment process. When people say, hey, we want to really start this effort, what do we do? Well, you're going to have to do some form of assessment up front. Without that baseline, as we talked about earlier, you don't have any way to really measure that impact. And then when it comes up on the chopping block, it'll be the first thing to be cut. So you need to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your clients ultimately to make sure that they're able to prove and show where and how this has been successful. We want to think about how we're creating the training. And when I say training here, it's more about educational timelines and timeframes for the organization, and then being able to inspire change in participants. Participants meaning the employees of the organization. People don't change because someone comes up in a great session or even puts out a mandate for it. People change only because they choose to change for one of two reasons. Either the pain of where we are right now is so great that they need to make that change, which hopefully isn't going to be our case within your client organizations, or the vision of the future is so compelling they can't help but want to move there. So in your D&I efforts, think about which case are you really presenting? How do you see this as a vision, as something that's proactive and positive that people will consciously choose and want to move toward? Now, once you then think about the business case, we're looking at what, why we would do it within the benefits, how we develop it, then what are some of the common elements of a diversity and inclusion effort in an organization? Well, again, because we're linking it to strategy, you got to have some strategic planning and consulting up front. You have to really think about how you'll be communicating it and executing that. We know that major organizational initiatives are undercommunicated tenfold in organizations. This is no different. So how do you really want to make sure that you are helping the client, or if you're internal on the council, bringing up the fact that you got to be able to communicate very clearly what those benefits are. The cultural assessment, there it is again, coming up, and the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are policies, practices, and procedures, and doing a clear audit of that. If you don't have, or your clients don't have, a council formed, you might think about why and how that would be a benefit to the effort. And then the inclusion part is all about education, training, building competencies, building skill sets that people use every day in communication with each other, that leaders use as good role models, and ultimately this then flows to our customer base. So it might be executive level, mid-level, all employees. Maybe you do some form of a train the trainer. But these are just some of the basic elements that are present in D&I efforts. want you to think about the beginning, the assessment, the data. We're all on a search. And quite frankly, our field of diversity and inclusion is being scrutinized at levels like never before. People are asking for tools, they're asking for proof, they want evidence, they want data, they want metrics, and you're going, how do I ever come up with all of those things? I want you to think about one of the reasons, and I think, Claire, you and others have said this at the beginning in our first chat box activity, that one of the things that's really lacking is a clear baseline, a benchmark. How do you know what to measure when you don't have a starting point to measure against? Do you realize that, I'm going to read a couple of stats here for you that I think are pretty amazing, that we don't even have a common definition of the term diversity or inclusion in our field. So you might have one consultant that's defining it one way and another way, and a consulting firm and an organization, and you've got all kinds of different definitions, which again makes it really hard for us to be able to benchmark against when we're not really measuring the same thing or even calling it the same thing. Even just in the year 2000, 15 years ago, we had the definition come out from the best practices in achieving workforce diversity, that it's all characteristics and experiences that define us as individuals. So people are kind of hanging their hat on that one. But again, it shifts so dramatically from organization to organization. More recently, coming back to just a couple years ago, 2014, we had 280 possible diversity benchmarks to measure against in 13 key categories. I mean, I'm an academician and I don't even know how to start with that one. That's just a big, wide field. So even where there is something for us to work around and about and with, it's so many choices and options that you're not quite sure how to delineate it and bring it into your client organizations or into your own organizations. So because of all this confusion, it's been easiest for people to measure what? What do you think? We always revert back to compliance data. So our compliance related metrics sort of drive the field, that really look at more protected classes around race, gender, age, disability. And I want you to really think about the idea that this could and should not just be around compliance. It should be around the way the culture is formed and how we bring in and attract not only employees, but customers, patients, consumers, whatever your particular focus might be. So I'm going to ask you a question now. Hopping over to another way for you to participate. On the left side of the screen, you will see that I'm asking you if you have a January to June birthday, please type over there. If you're this month in July to December, please type on the right side of the screen. And the question that I'm asking you is, what do you measure as a consultant in an organization right now, in HR, as a diversity council member? I'm just thinking back to all the roles that you said you were playing. What do you measure right now? Just please type it in. Are you measuring compliance related metrics? Do you measure performance? Do you measure engagement? What is it that you measure right now? Maybe not what you hope to measure, but what are you actually measuring in organizations? I'm going to give you a minute to catch up there. Okay, lots of July through December. Excellent. Okay, Deb, compliance. Absolutely. That typically is what we see the most. The others of you, Georgine, David, Sherry, what do you mean by engagement? Is it actually an all-employee survey? Is it a Gallup employee engagement survey? How are you actually measuring employee engagement? Just please type in and respond to that. Employee surveys, okay. Does anybody have a July birthday in that group? We have a lot on that side. Oh, good. We're catching up on the first half of the year here for birthdays. Employee engagement. Oh, employee surveys every 2 years. Retention and engagement via a survey. All right. So obviously, folks, we're seeing a trend. not just in this group, but in other, obviously, webinars that we've done, but clearly in the literature. This is where we're measuring because it tends to be the easiest to get a hold of. And I'm going to encourage you to think a little bit beyond that. Every line is the perfect length if you don't measure it. And also in organizations, every effort is one that isn't producing results and can be cut if we don't measure it. So another way to kind of think about that is, why do I need to be gathering this data, and why is it going to be important? Because we are being held to what, many other organizational efforts have been held to for decades, but it's coming up and we're getting a lot closer to that in our field as well. And that's why we're seeing a lot more written about this in our space. Lack of benchmarks, clearly it's there. I'm going to start quoting some of the results from a 2015 study that was done by PeopleFluent. Actually, it's a 2015 Strategic Diversity Measurement Survey that the Human Capital Media Advisory Group, it's that research arm of the Talent Management magazine. I don't know if any of you get that, but it's a fantastic free little magazine, and they've got lots of research pieces that come out in that through their research arm. So that group, along with PeopleFluent Research Institute, joined together to say, wait a minute, we want to answer some of these questions and explore the stages of what? Strategic diversity measurement. They basically came up with the idea that nobody's doing it well. There are a few people that are beginning, but when I share with you these stats, you might be a little shocked. I know that I was. But let me hop over to one more way to get some of your input before I share with you those stats. I'm going to ask you to tell me, please, in as much detail as you can. You don't need to type me a novel, but a little bit of detail. Challenges that you're currently facing, either in your organization or with your clients, and successes that you have had. Top part of the screen is challenges that you're currently facing. One for me is that when we do make efforts and we do get success, I'll end up having a sales organization say, well, we just incorporated a new sales training. That's what made the improvement with our customers, not you, not the D&I effort. And then successes at the bottom half. And I could share with you some of those too. All right, so challenges, baby boomer entrenchment, buy-in from the top executives. Yeah, that's always a big one, Kitty. Anybody, I'm going to look down here and see if anybody's having any success with that, and we could share some best practices too. Big turnover. So, Claire, David, we've got a lot of issues going on here with age, generation. Baby boomers are taking some of those early retirement packages. Another client I was with last week, and I kid you not, 40% of the team that I worked with the month before just took an early retirement package, and they went out in droves. So it completely changed the effort and the way that we were running D&I in that organization. Well, it will. Time will tell here. Okay, challenges with a reactive versus proactive review of affirmative action. D&I is in the vision, but no benchmarks exist. Excellent, Andrew. I'm going to hopefully in the next 20 minutes here give you some real specific ideas about what we can do about this. Oh, buy-in, successes, buy-in from employees and supervisors, working it from the bottom up. So Kitty, you're talking about difficulty from the top. So you just went the other way and said, fine, we'll work it the other direction. Fantastic. Enthusiastic response from people that have been asked to serve on the committee. Boy, that's a really big one. If you can get that energy going and keep that moving in an organization, fantastic. All right, as I move forward, I'm probably going to come back to some of these as well, but I do want to share with you just a couple of the top challenges according to the study that I was sharing with you as to what they're saying they're facing. So, top challenges. First one, surprise, lack of accepted benchmarks. Followed by, again, no shocker to us that have been doing this a while, lack of budget. And then it gets into the difficulty of working cross-culturally, cross-functionally, lack of resources, things that are a little bit more specific than some of the challenges that you were sharing. So I wonder if lack of resources isn't because there might be lack of executive support. Back to Kitty's idea about what a current challenge is. You can see that none of these are mutually exclusive, that you will find that there are some linkages clearly between these. And some of the quotes that we know of, hey, this business case still needs to be made. Uh, we're only measuring gender. We don't measure anything. Our department doesn't even have any metrics to report. So you're not alone in the frustration and the efforts. Okay, the good news. What is being done? Well, you can see that organizations, the blue line is people that are really beginning their efforts. They're already into it. They're moving forward. And the greens are more saying what are we still not doing? What's underdeveloped? So the beginning line, you can see from just a perspective here of recruiting, overall legal and compliance goals. That's a smaller one, and that's one that we're always saying we're measuring. But look, in comparison to some other ones, look at the work environment. Look at the diversity goals related to a succession plan. Just last month, I worked with one of our client organizations looking at how to build a finance objective into all managers and directors' performance improvement plans. Not performance improvement, they aren't all on performance improvement, on their performance appraisal plans, where they need to come up with a financial impacted goal related to diversity and inclusion. Hugely significant. We haven't launched it yet. We've written the piece. We're going to be doing that this fall whenever they rotate their next round. But the fact that it was approved, that it was written into it, and that we've already got people trained on how to educate people on their new performance appraisal process in their talent development cycle, and how D&I plays a critical part in that, absolutely huge. So really, really positive results there. What are some other measurement approaches? Well, some of you already said this. You're adding questions to your all-employee survey, or you're relying on your engagement surveys to be a metric for diversity and inclusion. And that's great. I mean, that's a place to start. But here's the thing. You don't want to just start there and then say, okay, that's it, because quite frankly, they're pretty generic questions. And when I go into organizations and pull out their engagement surveys and I'm trying to link that to the diversity effort, sometimes the questions are just too broad, too simplistic, like I feel valued by my manager. If I don't have a demographic breakdown of that, I have no idea what that 3.7 on a 5-point scale means, because I still may have a large demographic of the organization that's way down at the end of the scale. And I have no way to know that if I'm not breaking it down demographically. So too general, too broad, and we're making a lot of mental leaps by general engagement survey questions. Self-developed surveys, you can do that, put together a survey monkey, but they're not validated. Council input, councils can be really, really helpful to you because they're the ones that are out there in the organization, being that support, talking positively, building the energy for the effort, understanding and listening to where some of the rumblings might be that the council might need to be aware of and take some effort toward. Maybe it's in a communication strategy. Next one, we're looking at focus groups and interviews, the 3P audit. I mentioned that earlier, policy, practices, and procedures, or just some good old paper pencil surveys that might be used in a session. Now, we used to, from an individual perspective, we used to be able to use the Discovering Diversity profile as a part of training that was either paper, pencil, or electronic. But as I said, we retired that due to age, and we're coming up with something that's a little bit more specific that I'll be sharing with you. So other metrics, folks, what are some of the other metrics that people use? Things that they want to see an increase in, right there on that left side of the screen. They want to see an increase in minority representation, job satisfaction, customer service scores. But again, some of these things can be so broad if they're not specifically measured related to D&I that other efforts, initiatives, and programs, if you will, within the organization can take credit for that very easily. What are the things that we want to see a decrease in? Clearly, grievances, any discrimination findings, hate incidents, pay disparities, you know, and even just your energy kind of wanes whenever you look at that negative list. But these are what organizations typically are looking for right now. So what I'd like to suggest to you And what we really at Spectra Diversity believe that this field needs and is lacking is a more integrated approach. Instead of just doing an organization assessment, looking at surveys, focus groups, interviews, and then separately doing training, really integrating those two and looking at an assessment that would cover both organization elements and factors and items, as well as individual skill items. You can still add and augment that with secondary data, focus groups and interviews, recommendations based on assessment data, other assessment data outside of, maybe your 2-year all-employee data, right? So we can augment it with some of that secondary data as well. But self-assessments are really a way for us to think about one's own actions, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, and then have them bring that into a training environment to pull that apart and look at what they want to change. Remember, individuals don't change because of a mandate. They're not going to change because a measure has been added. They're going to change because they see a benefit that is presented to them in a palatable way that they personally can benefit as well as the organization. And that's where a tool like this can really come in handy. You could think about organizationally too, or in this case, using the individual and organization dual purpose profile that we're going to share with you as a baseline. So here's what we did around creating this tool. It's a 10-minute assessment. It has organizational items and individual items. The purpose of really looking at this tool, let me share with you just a couple bullets. First of all, on organization, it really does review the organization's perceived commitment to diversity and inclusion. And it also looks and helps you, Diversity Council members, consultants, and HR internal folks, look at what are the items that we really want to consider to lead our efforts. Instead of saying, hey, I did this over at organization X, let me pull that same effort into organization Y and see if it works. And then when it doesn't, you're wondering, well, what happened? So this is an opportunity to really look at what the people in the company are saying is working and is not working. So again, it helps you steer those efforts. Individually, it helps people to review their individual opportunities and also review their results in a facilitated session where they again decide for themselves what they want to change and how they personally can start exhibiting more inclusive behaviors. Everybody okay so far? I'm not seeing a lot going on in that chat box, so please feel free to jump in with that. I see some more people just joining, so we're going to try to get them going too, get them caught up. That's the purpose right here. I'm just going to leave that up there for a second. That's the purpose. Oh, and Chris is mentioning it also, when we were looking at the other slide about decreasing microaggressions as well. And if anybody has a story or an example, feel free to jump in. I can give you lots of examples around race generation. If you want an example or a story, type it in, hey, Amy, give me a more specific example, and I'll be happy to do that. Whoops. So our target audience, who is this profile targeted to? Well, councils. We've launched it several times with councils to help increase their education, employees at any level, corporate leadership, nonprofits, union employees, educational institutions. What exactly is the product? Well, it's a complete diversity and inclusion package for certified partners that want to join Spectra Diversity, that want to sign up and say, I'm in, train me, give me some training around this, give me some training that I could utilize with my clients. Oh, and by the way, you get some really special pricing as a partner so that you can do a wholesale cost and then a retail sell. So it gives you an opportunity also to increase and build your business. Ultimately, it's two clear pieces of information. One is the profile itself. And the profile is delivered by us at Spectra Diversity. It's completely online, and it gives the individuals an individual report immediately after responding. And the consultant, whether internal or external, you would only get the organization report so that you then can review it and decide how do you want to convey that information to either the Diversity Council, the D&I senior rep, whoever it is that is leading the charge in the organization. You get to decide how you want to use that org report data. When you are a partner with Spectra, you also receive a facilitation kit. And the facilitation kit has a half-day scripted seminar. You can pick and choose activities from that, or you can do it just as it's written and never change a word. It comes with a participant guide with PowerPoint, a reproducible job aid, like a little pocket card. And we also have some little video clips and video support in there as well for you to use. Basically, they're people on the street interviews. And it helps you to build definitions and look at why it's important to build stories and examples into the training. So if you personally don't have a lot of stories around microaggression, or if they're even too fresh for you where you can't really deliver them yet, not enough time has passed for you to be comfortable with delivering them without a lot of emotion, we've got those stories and examples as a part of the video support to help you get that conversation going, to jumpstart the conversation as a part of the training. So some very creative training techniques here. It is designed specifically for a US audience. All of our research on this tool is US centric. It is statistically validated. We went through a validation process. It took about 18 months. It's not an easy process. And I have to say 18 months is pretty doggone fast. In years past, it would have been 3 or 4 years. But due to technology, we can shorten that timeline a little bit. So we had about 18 months of research on the tool. We have a specific research report that's available should you want to look into that. Just email us, give us a call, whatever. We're happy to share the entire process with you, and it's all documented in the research report. So let me go to, oh, Chris, what are you saying here? Oh, we have an example where a company thought that oh, yeah, that's true. They thought they had these racial issues. They called us and said specifically, we really have a lot of racial issues. We need you to get in here. After we did a little bit more exploration and dug into it and did some measurement and broke the data down by demographic, we found out that it wasn't a race issue. It was more a generational issue. So that's a really great example of how we could have gone in out of, good intentions, delivered what they requested for us to deliver, and solved the wrong problem perfectly. So measurement really helps you to guide the effort and make sure that you are targeting and getting results for what actually is ailing the organization versus what just might appear to be what the issue is on the surface. So you might be wondering, hey, how much does this thing cost? Well, guess what? We've got a special offer for our launch pricing from March until, we launched it in March. So from March until September 30th of $12.99 per profile. And retail is set at $20.99. After September 30th, we're going to go to the standard pricing of $25.99 with, again, the retail cost of $49. So you can see you've got an opportunity to, again, have some business growth within your particular business as an external. Internally, you'd be buying at the wholesale if you were not working with an external consultant. And the facilitator kit, $1,500, includes all of the training, the partner pricing, as well as 2 90-minute webinars to certify you in the tool and get you up to speed as to facilitation tips and tricks and techniques, as well as a whole host of activities that we share with you that give you an opportunity to pick and choose what you would like to use either in your existing training or, again, use it exactly as we've written it if you are at a more introductory level. And by the way, when I say introductory level, I don't mean like basic stuff around awareness. There's a little tiny piece of awareness, but the majority of the training is really around skill building. And it includes, as I said, the videos, but also unconscious bias concepts, which everybody's interested in today. Not a new concept, but certainly has taken hold within our inclusion area, and certainly around how to develop more inclusive skills in the workplace. So what does it look like? Well, you got an individual and an organization report, and there is a maturity model that's associated with that. Now, somebody else said that they were using the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory, which is very well researched, very effective tool, but a very different purpose. So let's say that I've got an organization with 12 people in the C-suite or the executive level. I might give them the IDI to start the effort and then do one-on-one 90-minute sessions reviewing their results. The IDI is not a tool that you're going to want to be doing in a large group, 40, 50 people in the room. It's a one-on-one coaching tool and usually used at higher levels or executive levels. Once you get that effort done, then you could really move into a tool like this and it doesn't have to precede it, but then you could move into something where you're assessing in a particular team. There might be the finance department that has had an unusual level of a higher turnover, and they're reporting a lot of issues within the team, and you've identified them as a consultant as diversity and inclusion type issues. So you could just take that 50-person finance team and run the report with them and start looking at what the initiatives are that you might want to proceed organizationally within the team and then individually within the training sessions that would follow. Within the report, we have an actual key sections. There are 3 main sections to the organization report, and there are 2 main sections to the individual report, skill-based and beliefs. So we define each section, and then we give the organization tips and ideas as to what they could be doing differently, and the individual tips and ideas as to what they could be doing differently. We also have an opportunity for 2 open-ended questions to be customized by you. So that's pretty cool, because how many times have you done your own little survey and then tried to pull engagement data along with another set of data along with open-ended questions, and you're trying to merge them all. In this case, you actually, at no additional fee or charge of any kind, can customize 2 open-ended questions that you would ask of them. Now, for example, if I were doing this in an educational institution, I would talk about faculty, staff, and administrators. If I were doing this in an organization, I might talk about management and employees. If I were doing it in a health-based institution, it might be physicians versus staff. So, medical staff versus administrative staff, whatever the phraseology is or the verbiage for that client. The interesting thing is you can really hone in through those 2 questions as to what specifically the organization might be going through. We also give you an Excel delineated spreadsheet that would define specifically for you what the demographics are of that population. Now, if any population 9 and under is within your pool for that particular survey, that profile base, we're not going to provide the data. We'll give you the spreadsheet with the overall demographics like this, but we're not going to allow that to be a self-delineated file because we don't want people to be able to be identified. So we'll give you the demographic report, but you can also, if you've got 1,000 people, you have an opportunity to really break that down by demographic and see where the pockets are. I'll give you an example. Last year, March or April it was of 2016, we ran the profile with a university on the East Coast. They had both faculty and staff. We then took the results of over 800 people and presented that to the Diversity Council, who then created the strategic initiatives that they were going to embark upon, specific learning and education, specific things they wanted to change within policies and procedures, etc. They then had 1 year of effort. And in March of this year, we ran the exact same process for them again with the Spectra diversity and inclusion profile. The results then defined for them where they had some significant improvement and where they fell back. And the interesting thing is where they made the effort, they saw significant advancement, and where in one group where they didn't do the exact same effort educationally, they saw a backslide. So it's very interesting for you to be able to determine as a consultant, an internal HR person, now you've got a benchmark, now you've got a baseline, and you've got a way to be able to say, this is the impact that our efforts are having on the organization. And finally, each one of these items is broken down across the 5-point continuum. It's either a frequency scale or it's a strongly agree scale. So it's either about agreement or frequency of the behavior. Now, the cool thing about this is that you've got a spread. So you're able to see both, well, let me back up. Usually in a profile or in surveys, general surveys, not validated profiles, you'll just get a mean or an average. And you're making some mental leaps about that that might be a bit of a stretch. So in this case, as you can see right in the center of the screen, it defines for you the average, it gives you the average. It also, you're able to see the median, which is basically what that middle value is. You're able to see what the mode is, meaning the most repeated or most often response. And you're also able to see the range. Do we have an issue with it being all the way from ones to fives? And that is all very informative. And part of our certification process is to teach partners how to read the data, which is very simple, but there are some tips and tricks to it to be able to make then calculated, educated efforts as to what would best move that organization forward. So again, most profiles will give you an individual report, an org report. Here you get both, and you get the data broken down demographically and per individual item, so you can really make some more calculated decisions moving forward. And Chris is commenting, you can also see within a particular question how those different demographics would have responded. Spectra diversity. We are not a consulting organization outside of providing support for consultants and internal D&I or HR people leading the effort. We are not your competition. We are your support system in the background, providing you with a valid instrument, a valid profile, and tested training that will get you results. So this is very helpful to see a couple of the different types of things that you're using. So there's a question, can this be used in any size or type of organization? Great question. We actually have been using this in diversity councils as small as 5 or 6 people, and also as large as an educational institution, as the example I gave you with over 800. So it was really designed to be a US-centric tool because that's where we did our research. But it was, in terms of what our demographics were for the research, across a broad range of education, industries, gender, sexual orientation, and age. So we were very, very conscious about making that a broader tool. Chris is also reminding you that we've got a white paper that you might be interested in. And we very much look forward to connecting with you and supporting you as you move forward in this effort. If there's anything else that we can do to support you, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, it's spectradiversity.net is our website, and info@spectradiversity.net to reach us, and we'll be happy to help you in your efforts as we all continue to think about the measurement challenges, how we overcome them, and support each other in the D&I